Hello, welcome to Hot Mama's Cool Planet, where we bring you two bold lifelong friends, Mur in bustling London town and Mishi in sunny California, that's me, with a bicontinental podcast on sustainable living, self-care, and the gloriously messy middle of life. So we have a topic this week of plastic and recycling plastic and whether there is actually a point to recycling plastic, and we'll get to that in a minute. But first, we're going to do our small pleasures check-in. And so why don't you go first, Mur? What small pleasure did you have this week?
Okay, hello. Yes, I'm looking forward to today's plastic episode, but I think it's probably, just spoiler alert, gonna build into multiple episodes because there's a lot to cover. This week, let's see, I was really busy because I had just come back from vacation and my Godzilla is still home on her summer holidays, and the hairy guy, just after I got home, like a couple of days later, he's flying off, he's gone now, to visit his family in America. So lots and lots of long haul flights, which are gross, and working and trying to wake up and jet lag, and so it was a busy week. But in the middle of it, I did get to take some time for some self-care, and I got to soak in my hot tub in my garden, which, as far as self-care goes, has been the best investment I've ever made, is putting a hot tub in my garden. It's one of those inflatable kinds, and we keep jury-rigging it so that it continues to work even though it's broken. Like, it's way outlived its lifespan, but since we're on the subject of plastic, like, it's made of plastic. It's one of those inflatable jabos, and like, I don't want it to go into landfill. I want to keep it for as long as possible. So anyway, my tiny pleasure is that I was soaking in my hot tub, and I love doing that because it's like you're screen free and you're just staring at the sky or the weeds or whatever it is you're staring at. And this time I was eating a plum. It's the end of summer. I don't know if where you live, if it still feels like the top of summer, but here it's definitely starting to feel like autumn. There's been a bit of chill in the air. The spiders are starting to build their webs, and the blackberries have all fallen from the local bushes. And anyway, I had a plum, which is like the last taste of summer, and I had it while soaking in my hot tub, and it just felt like peace. It felt so good to be
Sounds like
chomping on
a
plum in the hot
great
tub.
way to recover from jet lag and airplane food.
I recommend it highly. What about you? What was your tiny pleasure this week?
My small pleasure was I was riding my bike. Sometimes I take this bike path out into the countryside that goes about 6 miles, and it was really hot because out here it still feels a lot like summer. So I stopped in the shade, and it happened to be under a tree that had figs. And so I hadn't brought water with me, and so I ate a bunch of figs. Kind of in survival mode, but they were delicious. They were really ripe, and then I foraged a bunch and brought them home. And there's just been figs ripening everywhere around town, at the park, in my backyard. So it's been a very figgy kind of week. I even got some of the Black Mission figs that are my favorite kind from the farmer's market this week. So it's been all about
figs,
yummy figs.
figs are the sexiest fruit, aren't they? I mean,
well, they're from the Bible, fig leaves, but I don't know about that.
They're. What did I learn about figs? That like there's a specialized insect, I think, that has it's like big nose that's like long and skinny. It can stick right down the inside of a fig, and that's how it pollinates. Because I guess it's a fig isn't exactly a fruit as much as it is like an inside out flower.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read a really good novel about figs. Well, no, it's called, it's by Elif Sharaf. Anyway, and it's, I should have done my research before coming here. I can do it in real time and then we can edit it. It's Elif Shafak, And the book is called, okay, yeah. So I read this really good book about figs by Elif Shafak called The Island of Missing Trees. And it had like multiple narrators in the book. And one of those narrators was a fig tree. And it was a really good novel. And I will just leave it at that. Hopefully that will pique your interest that a fig tree was
Yeah.
telling
I
part of the
mean,
story.
I like figs. When I lived in Singapore, the bats would eat figs, and that's how they got so puffy and round, like little teddy bears. And and we
Oh.
used to have an
Wait, the
apartment in
bats were
front of.
puffy like teddy bears?
Yeah, yeah, because we had an apartment that looked out onto the jungle, and the bats would fly into our living room sometime and get confused and about where they were. But they
So
mostly
you'd have
ate
like
these
little
tropical
winged teddy
figs.
bears?
Yeah. But
That
anyway,
sounds
let's get
amazing.
back to our topic this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although I could talk about teddy bear bats on figs. I mean, another time. We'll have to save that as a topic of conversation.
We can always circle back to it. So, all right. So, what do you want to talk? How do you want to title your topic with the plastic recycling? How did you get
Well,
curious about this?
so yeah, what got me going on this is the fact that here in London, I don't do like big haul supermarket shops. Like I don't have a car, so I can't, schlep like 10 bags of groceries home with me at once. I go to a tiny little shop every day, and I don't get that much stuff. So when we do get a big haul of groceries, we get it delivered. And that became even more common during COVID. So one of our delivery services that we get food from weekly or so is like, all about sustainability and, organic and locally produced kind of things. And one of the services that they provide is a plastic bag collection, and just not only plastic bags, but all film plastics. So, the wrapper off the fruit or off of your whatever it was that you had, all those plastic films. If you use saran wrap type of stuff, bubble wrap would work. So all of that they collect. And I thought that's really cool, and I wanted to look into it. And then I realized that if I were living the American life where I have a car and I go to a big huge supermarket every week, I probably would have seen it in the grocery store, in the supermarket, these big bins where they collect plastic bags. So this is actually a really common thing. But to me, I thought it was really neat that this little delivery service was also gathering our plastic bags. And I kept thinking, well, why? Are they really actually recyclable, or is this just like some sort of a myth? And how are
Oh,
they
I'm just going
recyclable?
to
Why?
interject here and say that I
Yeah,
have not seen those plastic bag collectors at the grocery store, but maybe I need to keep
really?
my
In like a
eyes
big
more open.
supermarket?
And
Yeah.
in my town, we can only collect hard plastics, and yeah, we can't collect the plastic bags like soft
So this
plastics.
is exactly what I realized was, okay, well, the fact that there's a dedicated plastic bag or film plastic collection point, why can't you just put it in your recycling, right? So there's a lot of reasons for that. And I do urge you to go to your supermarket, probably in the front area, like after the checkout, and then you like turn either right or left to go through the big door to go to the parking lot. Somewhere up in that front area, that's where it would be, this big bin where you could put in your plastic bags. So do check and see if you have it. The reason why you can't just put it in your curbside recycling is because film plastic bags will clog up the works. So recycling is an amazing process. Generally, what happens, and it varies though. I actually looked up our towns, not only our countries. Here I am in the UK and you're there in the US. Both of our countries struggle with the fact that each, you know, city or state or council or borough or whatever it is, how we divide up our little chunks of country, each of them manage it differently. So countries where they have like one overarching way of doing it are able to fare better because, here
Yeah.
people get confused. They just move like a few miles in one direction and all of a sudden the rules are different.
Yeah, I looked it up too, and because I didn't know, and I was like, oh, in California, plastics 1, 3, and 5 generally can be used, but then in each town it's like different. In my town, it's like 1 through 7, or so it's like all these different numbers of plastics. Like, who can keep track
It's
of that?
true. Who can? So many directions I could go with everything you just said there. But I guess what really stood out to me from all of this research is that it's deliberately being confusing. And this whole idea of people having to recycle and people having to sort their recycling in order for it to happen, there's truth to it. And I'll get to all of it. And there's ways you can manage it, but the underlying most shocking and important takeaway is that it's all a scam from the petrochemical industry to basically put the onus of plastic use and overuse on the people trying to recycle rather than on themselves, who know that this is a hopeless cause and it's never going to be a solution to the problem. And really, what we need to do is remember in the slogan reduce, reuse, recycle, that recycle is the last resort, especially when it comes to plastics. It's not at this point very effective, but there are.
So
That
wait,
said,
wait a minute. So
yeah,
how did you come
okay.
to this? It sounds almost like a conspiracy theory. I'm sorry, but like when you say it like that, like, okay, how did you come to this conclusion?
It
Because I
is
know
a
in the beginning you were like,
conspiracy.
how did this happen? And is my plastic
I
really
know.
being
How do they even?
recycled?
Right. How do they do plastic bags? Why is it a conspiracy? Okay, so back in like I guess the 70s, people started to finally realize that whoa, we're polluting. And in America, there was the whole "Give a Hoot, Don't Pollute" campaign, and here in Britain, that wasn't as much of a thing. But the point is that people started paying attention to pollution, and they did start talking to the petrochemical companies and saying, hey, you're making all this plastic and it's polluting. And so what they did at that time, what they were like, it's not our fault. You need all this plastic. This plastic is great and you want it. You want more plastic. So it's your problem now. You need to go and sort it. And if you can just sort it properly and recycle it, then everybody's happy. We all get to have our plastic and eat it too. But in fact, they knew from the beginning that plastic recycling is really difficult. And so you were talking earlier about like 1 through 7. I have not memorized what those types are, but the thing is like one of those types is these plastic bags, these film. Another type is like plastic bottles. Another type is like laundry jugs, like the dense plastic. There's all these different types of plastic. Styrofoam is a certain type. And some of them are able to be recycled to some extent, and some of them not at all. But if you mix them, they're made of different chemicals, they have different melting points, etc. If you mix them, they're contaminated and they won't recycle. And so if you keep them all in their own separate stream, maybe some of them stand a chance. But the reality is that this is a percentage I do remember. 9% of the world's plastic has ever been recycled. 9%, that's it. So 91% of the plastic that we've ever made is still out there as virgin plastic that has been discarded. And the way it gets discarded is either in
Okay,
landfill
okay.
or
So
incinerator.
okay, you're answering my question. So I was gonna ask what
So
happened. Why is plastic bad? Because I know I hear things that's bad because it gets in the ocean and bothers marine life or something like that. But
yes, that too. Okay, so yeah, first of all, it could get incinerated, and that's just sending out toxic fumes into the sky, and we don't want that. Secondly, in America especially, it gets put into landfills. Landfills often have accidents where it ends up getting, taken off into rainwater and it ends up in the water system somehow. So you end up with plastic leading to the oceans. But it also gets in the oceans in other ways. In shipping containers, oftentimes these big pallets will just fall off. And they're often full of what they call nurdles, which is a really cute word, but it actually means like the tiny little plastic pellets that these types of plastic, 1 through 7, get melted down into and made into these tiny little bean size, lentil size plastic things. And if one of those gets
ooh, who
dumped
knew
into the
there were these
ocean,
evil nurdles out there, like,
I know,
floating around the
nurdles.
ocean?
If you if you search for it, you will find pictures of fish just full of nurdles. It sounds so cute and it's so incredibly horrible. Yeah. So nurdles will get tossed into the ocean and landfill will run off, go into the ocean. But another huge contributor is driving. Every time you drive, your tire leaves little microplastics, which then end up, getting washed away and going into the ocean. So those are the main ways that they end up in the ocean, but they also end up, on land, in landfill, which is a horrible destiny, and in the sky when it gets incinerated. So really, it's quite a bummer. The thing is with plastic bags, even though they are recyclable, sort of, they can't be put into the curbside recycling because it'll clog up the works. So oftentimes that is a problem when where I live, we put all of our recycling in one bin and then it has to get sorted at a facility. And if there's plastic bags in there, it really makes things a problem. I was actually reading about it, and Davis, where you live, is like a utopia for recycling. Did you know that? Did you know that your city was voted like best recyclers or something like a couple of years ago?
No, I did go and finally get myself a compost bin for free from
Good
this
for you.
like large local office that gave it to me, and I was like, "Oh, thank you." But
Do you use it?
yes, I love using my compost bin. But
Yeah,
no,
where
I
I
wasn't
live.
aware that Davis was a super recycling town. Good to know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, you
was
won.
thinking like because I used to visit my grandmother in Germany way back in the like 80s and 90s, and they already had like really organized curbside recycling back then. So, and Germany has a history of being a more green nation, so I thought maybe maybe they would have things even more figured out, because even though apparently Davis is so great, it's still pretty confusing sometimes. Like each store you go to is a little bit different. Like what garbage cans you should use for different types of recycling, and they don't have a
It's so
system in place
confusing.
that's uniform and easy to
That's part of what I
understand.
was saying, how the US and the UK both, like everywhere, there's no consistency. But you're right, Germany does have it way more figured out than the US or the UK. So you having your German heritage and living in Davis, I just figured you must be some sort of recycling royalty. No?
Apparently, I just need to get in touch with my roots more. But my dad also, who's German, loves to recycle and
There you go.
obsessively. So he recycles rainwater and uses it to water the plants in the
Good for
garden.
him. Good
And
for him.
he recycles cans as part of his like retirement hobby. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a
Maybe it
little
is.
extreme, but
So Germany has it figured out, and one of the things that they do is they make they make the manufacturers of plastic. I focus mainly on film plastic rather than all of recycling or all of plastic even, just because it's such a huge topic. But Germany and other countries who do it well, they tend to have systems where the company, the petrochemical company that's responsible for making these things is also responsible for collecting them. So they put the burden a little bit back on them. They also make it consistent. Every single community has the same rules, so it's less confusing. But another country that does it really well is Japan. And have you ever
oh,
been to Japan?
yes,
They,
uh,
I
I
remember
love
when I was
Japan.
there, like a long time ago, 15 or so years ago, their recycling was so complex, so many different bins. And I think in retrospect, what they're doing is making you look at each type of plastic. So all those 7 different types of plastic goes in its
Wow.
own separate bin. And so they have some huge percentage of their recycling is successful, whereas the US is really dismal. I think Davis is an exception, but overall, the US, it's something like less than 10% of people actually can contribute to recycling because oftentimes, even if they want to, maybe their community doesn't recycle everything. Like my family lives in a part of Florida where they don't recycle glass. I mean, glass is one of the most recyclable things ever, but they don't do it because there's no market for it and it's too expensive. It's really heavy. So,
Just little
mhm,
idea here. Think talking of Japan, when I went there, maybe it was like over 10 years ago, but everything, there were robotic restaurants everywhere. And I wonder if
Yes,
with like robots and AI, there's some way to automate that process of like reading which type of, like you stick it in the can, it would automatically sort it for you or something like that. I would think maybe the Japanese would come up with something like that first more than other people.
maybe.
But just a
There's lots
thought.
of ideas. I mean, so a few years ago, China basically said, we're too polluted and we're about to have the Olympics. We don't want any of your garbage coming here anymore, which we historically have recycled for you, sorted and recycled. All of a sudden, they told the rest of the world, nuh-uh, we don't want your recycling anymore. So at that point, everyone had to scramble to figure out how to do their recycling on their own. And this is only like 5 or some odd years ago. So people are still figuring it out. And while countries have all had to do, shipping it elsewhere, to dump their garbage, putting more domestic facilities in place, modernizing the facilities to improve, how they sort through it. I feel like it's still new. It's still only been a few years that people have had to take more responsibility for their own garbage, their own waste, and I think ideas like that, these automated sorting, are feasible. But you know what would make it easier if they just labeled it better? I mean, right now you have these little chasing arrows and it's barely visible. It's often just like in raised plastic and like it's truly barely visible. And why don't they just make it bigger and you can see it for yourself? Like, oh, this is a number 2. I know what to do with 2. Put it in the bin marked 2, right? So they're deliberately trying to make it confusing and difficult because they don't actually want to do it. But the thing is that this plastic, which is so difficult to recycle, hardly anybody does it. When they do it wrong, it can contaminate the whole entire recycling thing, so it doesn't even make it to where it's going. And then once it's gotten to where it's going, if it is a successful recycled piece of plastic, there's not much life left in it. So different types of plastic have different amounts of recycling that they can do. And ultimately, even the ones that can be recycled a couple of times, eventually they just lose whatever ability that they had. And the final thing that you could possibly recycle most kinds of plastic into is like a lumber replacement. So like for decks and park benches and things. Like it wouldn't be structural wood, but it would be like other kinds of wood, or maybe bricks too. So it seems to me that like it wouldn't be so far off to figure out a way to mix together all of these plastics and just invest in replacing the timber industry. I don't know. I don't run the world, but that's my personal
I mean,
fantasy.
one of
And
my questions for you was, doesn't it seem like if there were more coordinated regulation of the industry, like in Germany, that, and or even on a global level, that would help so much with certain nations shipping their garbage to other poorer nations. And then what happens to it there? It still ends up back in the ocean and then it affects everybody. So it doesn't really
totally.
solve the problem. And
Yeah,
it's
so
also
to
not
solve
fair.
totally. It's so the whole thing, it's reduce, reuse, recycle. So reduce is the first one. And that is partially, us being capitalist, consumers who love buying stuff. And there are ways we can stop doing that. I can share some of those ways with you, but oh, I mean, like for myself, I no longer get plastic bags from the grocery store. Those have been outlawed around here anyway, single-use plastics. And in different parts of America and the EU, they have outlawed single-use plastic unless you pay for it.
Hmm.
So that's like one little thing. Look for those plastic recycling bins at your grocery. That would be the recycle part. Reuse is the second part. So if you do have plastic, reuse it, being a plastic bag once, it doesn't have to be a plastic bag the next time. You can use it in your gardening. Lots of times you need plastic sheets under the dirt to do whatever it is that's needing done.
Yeah, I don't buy plastic bags anymore. I just reuse like my little tortilla plastic bags and then like different things
Yeah,
have, it looks like they might be tortillas, but they're not. But still, it's better not to use too much plastic. So, yeah.
exactly. So reduce is the first one, reuse is the second one, and recycle is the third one. I guess other insidious bits of plastic that I think is invisible and hard to, it's, I don't know, I'm a little bit less conscious of it, is clothing. A lot of plastic clothing. Before we hit record on this, you were telling me about what you're wearing is probably made of plastic. Both of us are probably wearing plastic right now.
Yes,
Polyester,
polyester's plastic. Yeah,
nylon. Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
And that's not
I
recyclable.
specifically wore plastic for this episode.
How thoughtful of you. Yeah, we wear a lot of plastic. And so again, with reduce, don't buy new plastic clothes. Go to thrift shops and reuse, wear it to death. Who don't believe in fast fashion, believe in classic fashion and just keep wearing it over and over.
You can find
And
some really cool patterns that have lasted ages because they're in polyester from like the 60s and 70s. And yeah,
mhm.
yeah. Although I like to wear more breathable fabrics nowadays, but still, sometimes
I
it's
think
worth
if
it to
you're
have a
buying
really cool
Yeah,
fabric
if you're buying
pattern.
something new, make it out of a natural fiber, so cotton, linen, silk, wool. But if you're buying something used, what the heck, give that plastic new life.
Well,
I could keep going.
yeah. So what else? I was thinking like, what do I do to reduce plastic? One small thing is with Manga Monster's lunch. I used to buy sandwich baggies and make him little
Uh-huh.
sandwiches for lunch, and now I buy him like a nice sturdy lunchbox made of metal or plastic, but you're reusing it over and over again,
Right.
and then you don't have to use a whole bunch of little plastic baggies.
Definitely. That's one. There's another one. You can get like wax impregnated cloth, and it's like you can just wrap sandwiches or pizza or whatever in this like wax cloth and reuse that over and over.
Okay.
Um,
Are there any
yeah,
like cool
I,
inventions that the people have come up with to replace plastic? Like, I don't know, like seaweed plastic or is it sometimes hard? Because I think like if there was more support for the startups and scientists working on these things, government support, you could get somewhere. But with does the plastic industry sort of get in the way of that? Or
the plastic industry
I,
totally gets in the way of that. I didn't focus very much in my research on like new non-plastic alternatives, although I've certainly seen plenty of them. But what I did look at were some innovative ways of recycling. So, for example, like chip bags or crisp bags, as we say here, that like have like a layer of foil layered into the plastic. That's exactly what it is. It's like several layers of plastic that are stuck together, and those are not recyclable because all those different types of materials, you have to separate them again. So, like,
right.
there are innovators.
I just said right. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, there are innovators who are trying to come up with like chemical ways to break down these different substances into their original chemicals. And in fact, they're even trying to do that because the way that plastic only has one or two lives left in it, if it is recyclable at all, that's because every time you melt it and then reformulate it into these nurdles, which then get made into something new, it changes its chemical composition. But if you can break it down chemically rather than by melting it, it could theoretically retain the same quality as it did as a virgin plastic because it's just breaking it down into its original chemical parts. So there are like, different industries and science people who are looking at these sorts of things, but I still feel like it's not it's not holding the people accountable at the top of the food chain who are making so much plastic in the first place. And on the other hand, I get it. Plastic is great. I mean, it's lightweight and it can be any shape you want. It's really strong. It's totally necessary for some things like medical equipment. I wouldn't want to live in a world without plastic in terms of medical equipment. But yeah, I don't feel like recycling was ever a magic bullet to fix the problem. I think it was simply a distraction to get people to think that it's their problem to solve and not the industry's problem in the first place.
So, coming back to the original question that you started your interest in this topic, those plastic films that
Hmm. Hmm.
you were like meticulously collecting and recycling, do you think it's still worth it to do that? Or,
I do. I mean, even though I think I want to reserve most of my anger for the petrochemical industry, I feel like as a person, I don't have much sway with them. And all I can do is my own, live my own life. And so I do take a certain amount of pride knowing that I'm not clogging up my curbside recycling by putting those plastic bags in there. And I am hopefully making new, deck timber or bricks out of my plastic bags. I do think I could imagine a world where some people decide that they actually do want to make plastic really recyclable, not just this fantasy that was a distraction, but actually recyclable. And if the end product is this like plastic timber, then why not just take all the plastic and replace the lumber industry? Let the trees grow and not cut them down. It sounds like it could be like some sort of utopian vision, right? I don't know. I'm not an inventor, but I feel like there could be a real solution out there if people wanted to invest in the right efforts.
so, talk me through this because I haven't heard of plastic timber before. What are
Mm.
the pros and cons of it? Wouldn't it just be more plastic? Is that, or people say, well, it would be better than chopping down all the forest, and then that has a carbon cost in itself.
So
And
plastic timber is I'm sure you've seen it like park benches or playgrounds or decks. Sometimes it's like the shape of like two by fours, but it's made of plastic or partial plastic and sawdust like mixed together, right? And about roughly 50% of this type of planks are made of recycled plastic. So it's a pretty good hold on the industry. But there's so much more. I feel like with it's heavier than real wood and it's more expensive, understandably, but it could be more. It could last longer and be more sturdy. So it does have pros and cons. And I think that as normal people, we could, if we're building a deck in our backyard, use recycled plastic. I feel like it's not bringing more plastic into the world. It's saving old plastic from being in landfill or the sea. So
okay, I
I feel,
gotcha.
yeah, and they're not making this plastic lumber out of fresh plastic. I don't think that would be terrible. But if there's more of a need for plastic lumber, then there would be less of a need for wood lumber, and plastic could have more of a place to go once it's reached the end of its life. And I feel like it could be a potential solution, or one potential solution, because I don't
Yeah.
think we're going to ever grow tired of building new structures.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was thinking like people were making new plastic lumber and but yeah, as a solution for recycling plastic
And
once
then,
it's been used a
like
couple times, it makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and if it could save one, if we could save people from the cognitive overload of having to separate their different types of recycling, having to separate out their plastic, and having to save these facilities where they separate it for us from contaminated bundles, right? So in this vision, in this world, maybe all plastic would just be put into one bin. It'd all be melted down together and it would all become lumber together. And we wouldn't have to worry about the different types of plastic all being virginal. The reason why that's still a better solution at the moment is because money, right? So these different types of plastic on their own have more value. Is it worth the value of all the effort and everything? I don't know. The people who control the money at the moment seem to think so, but I do feel that there's a mindset change and a prioritization of what they actually want to get out of it. I don't know. If it wasn't so money focused, they might come to different conclusions.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, there is profit in the recycling industry. So, how can we make that all incentivize that, I guess. But anyway, we're just regular people trying to do the best we
Yeah.
can with and get informed about, what we can do. So,
Yeah. So, me as a regular person coming out of this, I basically said, I hate the petrochemical industry and I want to vote against them with my money and with my votes in some way. And whatever way that means for you will be your choice. But for me, it means avoiding plastic as much as possible. And when I'm bad because I can't or won't avoid plastic, for myself, it does mean that I try to recycle it and sort it, and I know that it's to very little avail, but I actually think that like this plastic bag recycling program that my food delivery company does is maybe more effective than just my curbside recycling, because I know exactly what I'm supposed to give them. I only give them that one type of thing. There's no confusion about it.
mm-hmm.
Whereas with my curbside recycling, I'm mixing paper, plastic, aluminum, glass, all of it in one thing. There's loads of room for error on my part and in the facility's part and my neighbors and everything, right? So I have more faith in these dedicated kinds of programs, and I will take part in them. But I think reduce and reuse still has to be the most important part that I can do, that I'm in control of myself.
Well, I feel so much more informed than I was before talking with you today about this. Even though apparently I live in a recycling town that is famous for
Yeah,
recycling.
I want to actually look
maybe
up
that's
here.
maybe it's kind of good when you don't even realize, like, when they've got a system worked out that's working and you don't even quite understand what's going on, but you just do the right thing by
Right,
putting
it's
it in the
part of
right
your
box.
culture. I have these visions, these utopian visions of these test pilot programs where a whole city is just, trying out a different way of living. What if we all lived with just recycled timber instead of normal timber in our homes? I just looked up what I found about Davis before, so you can feel proud of yourself. It won the Outstanding Zero Waste slash Recycling Program Award in August 2024. I don't know what the Outstanding Zero Waste Recycling Program Award is, but apparently your city won it just a year ago. And the city maintains very low contamination rates, only 5 to 7% residual waste found in recyclable bins, which is amazing because it means that your city actually knows what it's supposed to do. A lot of cities are much more confused and put the wrong things. They call it wish cycling. You're like, oh, that's made of plastic. I'll put that right in there, but it's not. Or, things like that that broken glass, that broken light bulb, that's glass. That should go in recycling. It doesn't, you know.
Okay.
So apparently Davis is really good at not doing wish cycling. And what else did I read about Davis? Oh, so Davis does separate paper from their bottles and cans, and I think that does produce better results. But that varies from one city to the next. Whether
Right.
most places have it in a single container, which is easier for the residents, but harder, on the sorting side. So the fact that Davis has trained its citizens, its residents, to sort for them, at least partially, means that they end up with a cleaner bales at the end of the process. And apparently, yeah, 86% of residents sort correctly 86% of the time in households. So that's pretty good. You gotta be proud of yourself for that one.
All right.
And what else did I learn? Basically, I was comparing Davis to where my council of London is called Southwark, and Southwark is better than where my family lives in Florida, but not so great. The UK in general is better than the US in terms of plastic recycling. The numbers I got was that in the US, 5 to 9% of plastic gets recycled. So that's hardly anything. Probably 50% of that is Davis itself. But here in the UK, I guess 44% try to get recycled and 12 to 15% actually gets recycled.
Those aren't encouraging numbers.
Those aren't encouraging numbers. But then where I live, Southwark is actually one of the less good places of the UK, which is too bad. It's, we set like a recycling target of 40%, I guess, and it seems like that's not even going to be met. So that's a drop in the bucket. Yeah.
So when you were looking into all this, did you share any of it with Godzilla, and what did she think about it?
I didn't share this latest research with her. It's
Was it too
interesting
depressing
though,
for
because
her?
when I've asked her to recycle in the past, it's like she's just not interested. I tell her, go throw this away and put it in a recycling. She's like, which bin does this go in? Every time she has to ask me which bin it goes in. And I'm like, you've been living here your whole life. What is that made of? Figure out which bin it belongs in, right? And for some reason, I have to tell her every time, that's film plastic. Put it in the film plastic bag. That's, hard plastic. Put it in the recycling bin. That's food waste. Put it in, compost, right? And the fact that she refuses to internalize that and get it and act on it on her own, I suppose must be a little bit of a window into why it's so hard for just everyone to adopt it.
Yeah, Manga Monster, I've only got him to finally not throw away recyclables in the regular garbage, but he doesn't actually. So I have one bin in the house that's like everything recyclable, and that's as far as I've got with him.
Why was it so hard? How did you finally get him to do it?
Just being there and saying, no, that doesn't belong there. Just watching him. Yeah.
Okay, so he got it eventually just on his own. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Huh. And why was it so hard? I mean, I don't feel like a person has to be very old, sophisticated. I would think a small child, Manga Monster's 11. That's old enough.
Yeah, I mean, it
why?
wasn't that hard. It's just, I had to catch him when he was putting it in the wrong place. First of all, even getting our kids to clean up after themselves, I feel kind of good about that. So plus points for that. But next level is getting them to do the proper recycling, sorting, and all that.
Or instead of getting them to recycle, do we get them to write letters to their Congress people, their members of parliament, and get them to complain, or get them to write to their sorting facilities, or get them to write to these petrochemical companies,
or to invent AI robots that help with recycling and read the labels for people or something like that.
Exactly. I guess I feel like for my personal action, I'm not fully satisfied with what I've done so far, which is minimizing the use of plastic and trying to recycle it. I feel like I want to do something bigger, and I don't quite know at this point how to advocate. I don't have huge amounts of money to invest, but if I did, I would be investing in some of these recycled plastic timber companies. And I don't really know what I would say to my Congress people if I what would I tell them to do? I don't know at this point what laws I'm trying to get them to enact. And I'm not sure which companies I'm trying to call on to tell them to package with less plastic. So I definitely would love to crowdsource more helpful tips on how to do more beyond just what you personally can do in terms of minimizing plastic.
Well, there is more to be done and research to see what we can do about things. So did you have anything else you wanted to share about this today? Takeaway for listeners?
Just that I guess just for myself, it's really doing the most I can do and kind of embracing the frustration of not knowing what else to do, because it means I'm always striving to do better and to think of ways that I can influence other people. That's really it. Just try to live according to my values.
Okay, sounds great. Well, that's it for Hot Mama's Cool Planet. Today we focused more on sustainability and got into plastic recycling.